Welcome back to the channel. I've got something different for you today. We're diving deep into a dark what-if scenario from the Fallout universe. What happens when Preston Garvey becomes the sole survivor of Vault 111? What if the man we know as the earnest, idealistic Minuteman leader woke up with memories he can't trust and a past he doesn't recognize? This video explores identity, manipulation, and the terrifying question of whether our memories make us who we are. You're about to hear the confession of a man who doesn't know if he's 210 years old or 10 years old. A man who discovers he might be the architect of a conspiracy spanning centuries. A man who has to choose between a calculated plan for the Commonwealth's future and the messy, human reality of actually caring about people. It's dark, it's unsettling, and it asks questions about free will, identity, and sacrifice that don't have easy answers. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. Now, let's begin. This is the confession of Preston Garvey, General of the Minutemen, who woke up in Vault 111 to find an army waiting for him and a past he never lived. My name is Preston Garvey, and I'm either 210 years old or 10 years old. I don't know which anymore. The memories in my head feel real, too real. I remember being a child in Vault 111. I remember my mother brushing my hair before the bombs fell. I remember the taste of her radstag stew, how she'd hum old songs from before the war while she cooked. I remember playing with toy soldiers on the floor of our pre-war home in Sanctuary Hills, lining them up in perfect rows like little armies. I remember the day the sirens went off, the panic, the running, my father carrying me through the chaos toward the vault entrance while the sky turned white. But they tell me those memories are lies. Colonel Shaw stood outside Vault 111 when I woke up. Not inside, like you'd expect. Outside, the vault door was already open, rusted and screaming on its ancient hinges as sunlight poured into that frozen tomb. I stumbled out of the cryopod, my whole body numb, my mind a fog of confusion and terror. Every other pod in that room was empty, dead. The frozen corpses of people I thought I knew stared at me through frosted glass. My parents, the terminal said, asphyxiation due to life support failure. 20 Minutemen in perfectly preserved pre-war uniforms stood at attention in the morning sun. Their laser muskets gleamed. Their colonial dusters looked like they'd just been pressed, not a single tear, not a speck of rust, like they'd been waiting in a time capsule for 200 years, ready for this exact moment. Colonel Shaw was the first to speak. She was old, maybe 80, with skin like aged leather and eyes that had seen too much. She saluted me, an actual military salute, crisp and formal. "General Garvey," she said, "welcome back." I didn't understand. "My name is Preston," I told her. "Preston Garvey. I'm just a kid. I'm 10 years old." She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "No, sir," she said. "You're much, much older than that." The Minutemen escorted me to Sanctuary Hills. The neighborhood was a graveyard of rusted cars and collapsed houses, but one structure stood untouched, a bunker hidden beneath the old playground. They'd maintained it for 2 centuries, Shaw told me, powered by a fusion reactor that had been secretly installed before the war. Inside, the walls were covered with maps, plans, documents, and photographs. Pre-war photographs. One showed a man in a military uniform standing in front of the Commonwealth State House. He looked like he could be my older brother, or my father, or me in another life. The caption read, "Colonel Preston Garvey, founder of the Minutemen Initiative, 2077. Shaw handed me a file. Inside were military records, deployment orders, classified documents marked with seals I didn't recognize. Operation Vigilance. The header read, Commonwealth Reconstruction Authority. According to these documents, I wasn't just a soldier, I was the architect. I designed the whole thing. The vaults, the plan to rebuild, the Minutemen network, all of it, conceived and executed by me before the bombs fell. They said I volunteered for cryogenic suspension as part of a secret government program, a failsafe to ensure someone would be there to guide the reconstruction when the time came. But I don't remember any of that. I remember being a child. I remember my mother's voice. I remember being scared of the dark. I remember crying when my father left for work because I thought he might not come back. Those memories feel as real as the cold floor beneath my feet. Shaw sat me down in the bunker's command center, a circular room with monitors and terminals that still functioned after all these years. She activated a screen. It showed security footage from Vault 111, grainy and flickering. The timestamp read the 23rd of October, 2077. I watched myself walk into that vault, but it wasn't the me I remembered. It was an adult, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a military uniform. I watched myself step into the cryopod with the calm efficiency of someone who knew exactly what was happening. No fear, no hesitation, just duty. The camera angle shifted. Another pod opened. A child stepped out, confused and crying. That child looked like me, as I remembered myself. A little boy, maybe 10 years old, with my face, my eyes. He was led to another pod by Vault Tech scientists in white coats. They placed him inside gently, like they were tucking him into bed. 2 Preston Garveys, 1 adult, 1 child, both frozen on the same day. Shaw turned off the screen. The child's memories were implanted, she explained. A psychological safeguard. The real you, the Colonel, designed it that way. You knew the weight of what you'd done, planning for the end of the world. You knew that if you woke up with all those memories intact, the guilt might destroy you. So you created a backup, a version of yourself who remembered innocence instead of responsibility. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that it didn't make sense, that I was just a kid who wanted his parents back. But the words caught in my throat. The Minutemen had been waiting for me. Shaw explained it all in that underground bunker, her voice steady and certain. Every Minutemen leader since 2077 had taken the name Preston Garvey. A tradition, a legend, a promise that the founder would return. They'd passed down stories, maintained the bunker, kept the old equipment running, generation after generation, waiting for the day the vault door would open and their general would emerge. But here's what doesn't add up. If I planned all this, why do I remember being a child? Why do I remember things that contradict the official story? I remember other children in Vault 111 playing in the corridors. During what I thought was the decontamination process, I remember a Vault Tech employee, a woman with kind eyes, telling me everything would be okay. I remember the smell of the cryopod, metallic and cold, as they sealed me inside. Shaw gave me a Pip-Boy, not just any Pip-Boy, but one that had been waiting in the bunker, custom built with hardware I'd allegedly designed myself. When I strapped it on, files automatically loaded, encrypted files. Most of them were locked, inaccessible even to me. But one folder opened, Reconstruction Authority Override. Inside were schematics, plans for settlements across the Commonwealth, pre-designated safe zones, supply caches, communication networks, everything you'd need to rebuild a civilization from scratch, and coordinates, hundreds of coordinates marking locations all over the map. One set of coordinates led to the castle. We went there the next day. Fort Independence, they called it in the old world. The Minutemen's traditional headquarters. It had been overrun by Mirelurks decades ago, Shaw told me, abandoned after a disaster in 2240 that killed most of the leadership. But when we approached, something strange happened. The castle's radio beacon activated on its own. No one touched it. No one turned it on. It just started broadcasting, triggered by my proximity. The message that played was in my voice. An adult voice, deep and commanding, but unmistakably mine. I recognized it the same way you recognize your own voice in a recording, even though it sounds wrong to your ears. People of the Commonwealth, the message said. This is General Garvey. Phase 2 of Reconstruction begins now. All designated settlement leaders, prepare to receive your orders. The time has come to rebuild what was lost. Stand ready. Stand together. The Minutemen have returned. I didn't remember recording that. I didn't remember planning any phase 2. But settlements across the Commonwealth responded. Radio chatter filled the Kleist. Airwaves, as people I'd never met, acknowledged the message and confirmed they were standing by. Shaw's eyes were wet when she looked at me. "You really did it," she whispered. "You planned for everything." But I didn't plan for this confusion. I didn't plan to wake up with 2 sets of memories battling in my skull. I didn't plan to feel like a stranger in my own skin. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the bunker, staring at the photographs on the wall. The man in the military uniform, Colonel Preston Garvey, that was supposed to be me. But when I looked in a mirror, I saw a young face. Not a child, but not the weathered soldier in those pictures either. Somewhere in between. I accessed more files on the Pip-Boy, scrolling through folders with names that meant nothing to me. Project Sanctuary, Operation Safeguard, Commonwealth Protocol. Each one was locked, requiring codes I didn't have. But one file opened. Personal log, the 22nd of October 2077. It was a video recording. The man on screen was me, or the me I was supposed to be. He sat in what looked like a military office, the same uniform from the photographs. He looked tired, haunted. "If you're watching this," the recording said, "then it worked. You woke up, and you're probably confused as hell. I designed it that way, Preston. Or should I say, we designed it that way. The truth is complicated, and I don't have much time to explain. The bombs fall tomorrow. Vault Tech thinks they're running a simple cryogenic experiment. They have no idea what we've really built." He leaned closer to the camera. "You need to know that everything you remember about being a child, about having parents in that vault, about growing up in Sanctuary Hills, none of it is real. Those memories were implanted as a psychological buffer, a way to give you emotional stability when you woke up. Because the truth, the real truth, is too heavy for anyone to carry alone." My hands shook as I held the Pip-Boy. The recording continued. "I created the Minutemen Initiative as a contingency plan, a network of settlements, resources, and people trained to rebuild civilization after the inevitable collapse. I knew the bombs were coming. I tried to stop it. God knows I tried. But when I failed, I did the only thing I could. I made sure someone would be there to pick up the pieces. That someone is you, is me. I don't even know how to talk about this without sounding insane." The man on screen rubbed his face. "You're going to meet people who claim to know you. They'll have stories. They'll have proof. Some of it will be true. Some of it won't. Trust your instincts, Preston. Trust the part of you that remembers being a child, because even though those memories are artificial, they're designed to keep you human, to remind you that we're rebuilding for people, not for power or control. There's more you need to know, but I couldn't include it in this message. Too dangerous. The Institute is watching. They've been watching since before the war. Your brother, your real brother, Sean, is with them. They took him from Vault 111 60 years ago. They've been searching for you ever since. My brother, Sean." The name hit me like a bullet. I had no memory of a brother, neither in the child memories nor the fragmented adult ones. But the man on screen spoke about him like it was a fact I should know. "The Institute doesn't know the full extent of what you planned," the recording continued. "They think Sean is the only genetic sample they need. They have no idea about the backup protocols, the Reconstruction Authority, or the real reason Vault 111 was built. Keep it that way. When they finally find you, and they will, you need to be ready. There's a fail-safe built into your Pip-Boy, a file called Commonwealth Protocol. When the time is right, when you've gathered enough settlements and rebuilt enough of the network, that file will unlock. Follow those instructions exactly. Everything depends on it." The recording ended. The screen went black. I sat there in the dark, my mind spinning. A brother, the Institute, backup protocols. None of it made sense, but my Pip-Boy confirmed it. There was indeed a file called Commonwealth Protocol, sealed tight with encryption I couldn't crack. Over the next few days, I tried to live with the contradiction. The Minutemen followed my orders without question. When I told them to scout a location, they moved immediately. When I suggested a settlement strategy, they treated it like Holy Writ. It was unsettling. These people looked at me like I was some kind of savior, the answer to 200 years of prayers. But I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like a fraud, a 10-year-old kid playing dress-up in someone else's uniform. Then, the Institute made contact. It happened in Diamond City. I'd gone there with Shaw and a small group of Minutemen to establish trade relations, trying to act like the leader they needed me to be. The market was bustling, people hawking pre-war junk and mutated crops. When a man in a suit approached me, he was too clean, too well-groomed for the wasteland. His eyes had that uncanny quality I'd heard about, the slight wrongness that marked synths. "Preston Garvey," he said. "My name is X6-88. Father wishes to speak with you." Father. I knew that title. Shaw had warned me. The leader of the Institute, the mysterious figure who controlled an underground empire of technology and science. But hearing that name in connection with Sean, my alleged brother, sent ice through my veins. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said. The synth smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Father anticipated your resistance. He asked me to give you this." He handed me a holotape. Then he vanished into the crowd before my Minutemen could react, moving with inhuman speed and precision. Back in the bunker, I loaded the holotape. The voice that played was older, refined, but somehow familiar. "Brother," it said, "I know you don't remember me. I know they did something to your mind, something to make you forget. But I remember. I remember when we were children, before the bombs, before Vault 111. I remember you teaching me how to tie my shoes. I remember you promising you'd always protect me." The voice cracked slightly, a hint of emotion breaking through. "They took me from that vault when I was an infant. The Institute needed pure, unirradiated DNA. They used me to create the next generation of synths, the perfect fusion of man and machine. I should hate them for it, for stealing my childhood, for making me into a tool. But I don't. I've done something with that pain, Preston. I've built something incredible. The Institute represents humanity's best hope for survival, not the wasteland, not the Commonwealth, with its raiders and mutants and endless violence. Us. We are the future. And you were supposed to be part of it." A pause, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. "I've been searching for you for 60 years. I've sent agents. I've monitored every vault. I've analyzed every report of cryogenic anomalies. And when I finally found you, when I saw that Vault 111 was opening, I thought I'd get my brother back, the one who planned everything, the one who understood that sometimes you have to make hard choices for the greater good. But then I accessed your vault records. I saw what they did to you, the memory implants, the psychological conditioning. They turned you into a child, Preston. They stripped away everything that made you who you were. And now you're out there, playing soldier with the Minutemen, rebuilding a world that doesn't deserve to be rebuilt. Come home, brother. Come to the Institute. Let me show you what we've accomplished with the foundation you laid. Let me give you back the memories they stole. We have the technology. We can restore you." The recording ended with coordinates, an invitation, a trap, maybe, or maybe the truth I'd been searching for. I sat in that bunker for hours, the holotape clutched in my hand, 2 versions of Preston Garvey, 2 sets of memories, 2 possible futures, and somewhere in the Institute, a brother I didn't remember who claimed I'd planned all of this. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know if I'm the only one who feels this way. The Minutemen were waiting for my orders. Shaw had assembled them in sanctuary, 20 soldiers ready to follow me into whatever hell came next. They believed in me. They believed in a version of Preston Garvey who had all the answers, who knew the plan, who would lead them to victory. But I was just a kid with too many memories and not enough truth. A kid who woke up in a frozen tomb to find the world had been waiting for him to save it. And every day, I felt the weight of those expectations crushing me a little more. Because here's what terrifies me most. When I close my eyes, I don't know which dreams are real. I dream of military, briefings, and strategic plans. I dream of holding my infant brother while my parents smiled. I dream of standing in a command center, watching missiles launch across a map of America. I dream of playing with toy soldiers on a carpet that smelled like home. Which Preston Garvey am I? The child who lost everything, or the soldier who planned for the end of the world? I don't know, but I'm about to find out, because tomorrow I'm going to the castle. I'm going to activate whatever protocols are hidden there, and I'm going to see if the real Preston Garvey, whoever that is, has the answers I desperately need. The Commonwealth is watching. The Institute is waiting. The Minutemen are following, and I'm standing at the center of it all, trying not to fall apart. The castle recognized me. I don't mean in some poetic sense. I mean the fortress itself, the ancient systems buried in its walls, actually recognized my biometric signature and activated. Shaw and I had barely crossed the threshold into the courtyard when the ground beneath us started to hum. Old machinery, silent for decades, suddenly roared to life. The Mirelurks never stood a chance. Automated turrets emerged from hidden panels in the walls, pre-war defense systems I didn't know existed. They targeted every hostile in the courtyard with surgical precision, leaving me and the Minutemen completely untouched. Within minutes, the castle was clear. No queen emerged from the water. No desperate battle, just efficient, calculated extermination. Shaw stared at the smoking remains of the Mirelurks, then at me. "How did you do that?" she whispered. "I didn't," I said. But my Pip-Boy was flashing. A new file had unlocked. Castle Defense Grid, Manual Override. I'd never accessed that system, never gave it a command. It activated the moment I stepped inside, like it had been waiting for me, specifically. We found the command center deep in the castle's tunnels, past the collapsed sections and flooded corridors. The door was sealed with a biometric lock, the kind that requires a handprint and retinal scan. Shaw couldn't open it. None of the other Minutemen could either. But when I placed my hand on the scanner, it opened immediately. Inside was a room that looked like it belonged in a pre-war military installation. Functional terminals. Maps of the Commonwealth, with hundreds of marked locations, and a holographic display in the center showing a three-dimensional model of the entire region with settlement networks, supply routes, and defensive positions all mapped out in meticulous detail. This was built before the war, Shaw breathed, before Vault-Tec, before any of it. She was right. The dust on the equipment was exactly 210 years thick. No one had been in this room since the bombs fell, but everything still worked, powered by some hidden reactor that had run continuously through the centuries. I approached the main terminal. It activated at my touch, no password required. Files opened, automatically, scrolling past faster than I could read. Then, a voice came through the speakers, old and crackling but unmistakably mine. Authorization confirmed. General Preston Garvey, Reconstruction Authority active. Initiating Phase 2 protocols. A map appeared on the holographic display, showing every settlement in the Commonwealth. Some were marked green, active. Most were marked yellow, dormant. A few were marked red, compromised. Each green marker pulsed with data, names, population counts, resource inventories. These settlements had been waiting, just like the Minutemen. Families who'd been told stories about the general who would return, communities that maintained old equipment and followed protocols passed down through generations. They'd been preparing for me for 200 years. Shaw pointed to one of the red markers. "That's Quincy," she said quietly. "Where Colonel Hollis died, where we lost almost everything." The terminal beeped. A message appeared. "Quincy, settlement, compromised by Institute interference. Recommend immediate containment and restoration of original leadership. Institute interference." I thought about the synth in Diamond City, the holotape from my supposed brother. They'd been watching the Commonwealth settlements, infiltrating, sabotaging, and they'd known about this network the whole time. I pulled up more files, trying to understand the scope of what I was looking at. The reconstruction plan wasn't just about rebuilding, it was about control. Every settlement had designated leaders, specific roles, predetermined trade routes. It was a blueprint for an entire civilization designed before the war even started. And according to these files, I designed it. My hands moved across the terminal with disturbing familiarity. I navigated the system like I'd used it 1,000 times before, even though I had no conscious memory of it. Muscle memory, instinct, whatever you want to call it. My body knew things my mind didn't. I found a folder labeled Personnel Files and opened it. Inside were dossiers on key individuals across the Commonwealth. Preston Garvey's personal assessments, the headers read. Each file contained detailed analysis of someone's skills, loyalties, and potential usefulness to the reconstruction effort. Colonel Ezra Hollis, reliable, strong tactical mind, lacks strategic vision, suitable for field command, not overall leadership. The assessment was dated 2076, 1 year before the bombs fell. I kept scrolling, found more names I recognized from Shaw's stories about the Minutemen's history. General Becker, competent administrator, poor combat leader, will maintain stability but won't adapt to crisis. Replace when necessary. General McGann, brave but reckless, will die heroically. Plan accordingly. These weren't observations, they were predictions, and they'd all come true. Becker died in infighting, just like the file said he would. McGann died in the castle during the Mirelurk attack, trapped in the tunnels exactly as predicted. I was about to close the folder when I saw another name, one I didn't expect. Mama Murphy, psychic sensitivity confirmed. Useful for guidance but unreliable. Monitor closely. Do not allow chem dependency to progress beyond functional thresholds. I'd never met Mama Murphy, but Shaw had mentioned her. An old woman with the sight, she'd said. Someone who saw things others couldn't. Someone who'd been with the Minutemen during the Quincy massacre. The file on Murphy was extensive. Pages of observations about her visions, her predictions, her uncanny ability to sense danger before it arrived, and a note at the bottom that made my blood run cold. Subject appears to receive information from external source, possibly quantum entanglement with pre-war reconnaissance network, requires further study after reconstruction begins. External source, quantum entanglement. These weren't mystical visions, they were data transmissions. Murphy was picking up signals from some pre-war system I'd allegedly built. I pulled up another file. This one was labeled Project Safeguard Contingency Protocols. Inside was a plan so comprehensive it took my breath away. It wasn't just about rebuilding settlements. It was about ensuring that the right people survived, that the right knowledge was preserved, that civilization could restart with the correct foundation. There were protocols for everything, instructions for maintaining specific bloodlines to preserve genetic diversity, directives for hiding technology until the Commonwealth was ready for it, even guidelines for managing faction conflicts to prevent any single group from gaining too much power. And there, buried in subsection 7, was a note about Vault 111. Primary asset will be placed in cryogenic suspension with false memory implants to ensure psychological stability upon revival. Secondary asset will be extracted by Institute contacts for synth program development. Both assets essential to long-term reconstruction success. Primary asset, secondary asset. Me and Sean. I'd planned for them to take my brother. I'd known the Institute would need him, and I'd arranged for it to happen. Shaw was reading over my shoulder. Her face had gone pale. "Sir," she said softly, "what is this?" "I don't know," I lied, but I did know. I knew exactly what it was. It was proof that everything, every tragedy, every loss, every moment of suffering over the past 2 centuries had been part of a plan. My plan. I killed the terminal and backed away from it. "This is wrong," I said. "All of this is wrong. I didn't do this. I couldn't have done this." But my Pip-Boy was already unlocking more files. The Commonwealth protocol was active now, feeding me information I didn't want. Settlement names, contact codes, authorization phrases, everything I needed to take control of the entire reconstruction network, and with it came memories that weren't mine. Or were they? I remembered. Sitting in a military planning room, officers surrounding me, maps of the Commonwealth spread across the table. We were planning for after, for when the bombs fell and the world ended. I was younger in that memory, maybe 25, wearing a uniform with ranks and medals I didn't recognize. Someone was asking me about casualties, acceptable losses, how many people we could save versus how many we'd have to sacrifice. I remembered my answer. We save the ones who can rebuild. Everyone else is a resource allocation problem, cold, calculated, monstrous. But it felt real. It felt like a memory I'd actually lived. I stumbled out of the command center, Shaw calling after me. I needed air, needed space to think. But when I emerged into the castle courtyard, the Minutemen were waiting. Dozens of them now, more than Shaw had brought. They'd heard the castle's systems activate. They'd seen the signal broadcast across the Commonwealth, and they were all looking at me like I was their salvation. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was old, ancient really, her face weathered by decades of wasteland survival. She moved with a cane, each step deliberate and painful. But when she reached me, she straightened and saluted. "General Garvey," she said, "I'm Ronnie Shaw. I've been waiting a long time for you to come back." Another one, another person who'd been waiting for me. Shaw, the younger Colonel Shaw who'd been with me since Vault 111, moved to intervene, but the old woman held up a hand. "I know what you're thinking, General," Ronnie said. "You're thinking this is all some mistake, that you're not the man we've been waiting for, that those memories in your head, the ones about being a child, those are the real you." She leaned on her cane, her eyes sharp despite her age. "Let me tell you something. I was there. I was at the castle in 2240 when General McGann died. I was 17 years old, just joined up, thought I was going to save the Commonwealth. And you know what McGann said to me before the Mirelurks got him?" She paused, letting the weight of memory settle. He said, "When Garvey comes back, when the real Garvey returns, make sure he knows the armory codes. Make sure he can access the artillery, because we're going to need it for what comes next." He knew you'd return. They all knew. Every general, every leader, they all knew the story. The founder would come back when the time was right. And here you are. "But I'm not him," I said. "I don't remember being him." Ronnie smiled, sad and knowing. "Memory's a funny thing, General. We remember what we need to survive. And maybe you needed to forget. Maybe that's why you planned it that way." She turned and started walking toward the western bastion of the castle. The armory's still sealed. Been sealed since McGann's time. I've kept the faith, kept the codes, kept everything ready. But it won't open for me. It'll only open for you. I followed her because I didn't know what else to do. The other Minutemen fell in behind us, a procession moving through the ancient fortress. We descended into the tunnels, past the command center I just fled, deeper into the castle's foundations. The armory door was massive, reinforced steel, with a biometric lock that looked even more advanced than the one on the command center. Ronnie stepped aside and gestured for me to approach. I placed my hand on the scanner. Retinal scan, DNA verification. The lock cycled through multiple security protocols, then clicked open with a sound like a vault unsealing. Inside was enough firepower to arm a small army, laser muskets, missile launchers, power armor, and in the center of the room, a terminal connected to something much larger. "Artillery," Ronnie breathed. "The castle's artillery system. We thought it was destroyed in the Mirelurk attack, but it wasn't. It was just locked down, waiting." I approached the terminal. It activated at my touch, displaying firing solutions and targeting coordinates that updated in real time based on the settlement network. The artillery wasn't just defensive. It was integrated into the whole reconstruction system, capable of supporting any settlement under attack within minutes. And then I saw the range. The castle's artillery could hit anywhere in the Commonwealth, including the Institute's known access points. This was a weapon designed to destroy them. My brother's people, the ones he wanted me to join. A new message appeared on my Pip-Boy, not from the castle's systems, from an external source. "Institute frequency. Brother," the message read. "I'm watching you activate the systems. I can see what you're doing, and I understand now. You really don't remember. The man who planned all this, the one who designed the contingencies and the protocols, He's gone. They erased him and left a child in his place. But I can help you. I can restore what was lost. Come to the Institute. Let me show you who you really were. Because the Preston Garvey I've been searching for wouldn't hesitate. He'd know exactly what to do. If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I'll be reading them. I closed the message and looked at Ronnie. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe, or fear. Can I ask you something? I said. All these years you've been waiting, all the stories passed down about me. Did anyone ever say why? Why I did all this? Why I planned for the end of the world instead of trying to stop it? Ronnie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The story goes that you tried, that you spent years trying to prevent the war. But when you realized it was inevitable, you made a choice. Save everyone you could, build something that could survive the fire, even if it meant making terrible decisions, even if it meant sacrificing parts of yourself." She looked around the armory. They say you knew what the memory implants would do. That you knew you'd wake up confused, maybe broken, but you did it anyway. Because the man who could plan all this, who could make all those cold calculations, that man couldn't be the one to rebuild. The wasteland doesn't need a tactician. It needs a leader who remembers what it's like to be human. The weight of her words settled over me. A plan within a plan. Sacrifice my own memories, my own identity, to create the person the Commonwealth needed. But it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like murder. The Colonel Preston Garvey, who planned all this, had killed himself and left me, a confused child, in an adult's body, to clean up the mess. More Minutemen were arriving at the castle every hour. Word had spread across the Commonwealth. The general had returned. The reconstruction was beginning. People came with stories, with evidence, with their own pieces of the puzzle. A settler from Sanctuary showed me a pre-war letter addressed to Preston Garvey, thanking him for his service in establishing the Vault-Tech partnership. Another brought a holotape of me giving a speech at some military ceremony, talking about America's future and the need for contingency planning. Every piece of evidence confirmed the same thing. I was him, the colonel, the architect, the man who saw the end coming and planned for what came after. But none of it felt right. None of it felt like me. That night, I stood on the castle's walls, looking out at the Commonwealth. Lights flickered in the distance. Settlements activating old systems, responding to the protocols I'd allegedly set in motion. The reconstruction network was coming alive, and I was at the center of it whether I wanted to be or not. My Pip-Boy chimed. Another message, this one from a settlement I'd never heard of. "General Garvey," it read, "this is Oberlin Station. We've maintained the stockpile as instructed. 3 generations of my family have guarded it. We're ready to contribute to Phase 2. Please advise." Stockpile. Phase 2. More pieces of a plan I didn't remember making. I responded with authorization codes that came to my fingers without thought. The settlement confirmed receipt and reported they were mobilizing resources. It was terrifyingly easy. Like I'd done it 1,000 times before. Shaw found me on the wall. The younger Shaw, not Ronnie. She looked concerned. "You need to rest, sir. This has been an overwhelming day." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Overwhelming. That's one word for it. I woke up a week ago, thinking I was a kid who'd lost his parents. Now I'm apparently the mastermind behind a 200-year plan to rebuild civilization. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "What if it doesn't matter?" "What? What if it doesn't matter which Preston Garvey you are, the child or the colonel? What if the only thing that matters is what you choose to do now?" I wanted to believe that. I wanted to think I had a choice. But the evidence kept mounting. The muscle memory, the automatic responses, the way my body moved through combat situations with trained precision I didn't consciously possess. Earlier that day, raiders had attacked one of our supply lines. I'd engaged them without thinking, my hands moving in patterns I didn't recognize. Disarm, strike, neutralize. 3 hostiles, down in seconds, using techniques I'd never been taught. Or had I? Was that the colonel's training, still buried in my nervous system? The distinction between me and him was blurring. Every hour brought new evidence that we weren't separate people. We were the same person, just fragmented. And the longer I spent as General Garvey, the more the Colonel's patterns reasserted themselves. I was becoming him, or remembering him. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Another message came through. This one made my blood freeze. The synth from Diamond City appeared on my Pip-Boy screen, X6-88. Behind him was a figure I recognized from the holotape. Older, graying, but unmistakably the infant I'd allegedly known as my brother. Father stood in what looked like a pristine white laboratory, surrounded by technology that made the castle's pre-war equipment look like toys. "Hello, Preston," he said. "I thought it was time we met face to face. Well, screen to screen at least. I'm not quite ready to come to the surface just yet." He smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. "I've been watching your progress, the castle activation, the settlement network coming online, the artillery systems, very impressive, very much according to plan. Your plan, I should say." He gestured to something off-screen. "We've been maintaining our own version of the reconstruction effort down here. The Institute represents the pinnacle of pre-war scientific achievement, preserved and advanced, and it all started with you. With the genetic material you arranged for us to acquire, with the protocols you established before the war." My breath caught. He was confirming it. Everything Ronnie said, everything the files showed, Sean was telling me it was all true. "You arranged for my extraction from Vault 111, he continued. "You knew the Institute would need pure DNA for the synth program. You knew they'd take me, and you planned for it, because you understood that the surface world and the Institute both needed to develop independently before they could be brought together. That was always your vision, wasn't it? Two paths to humanity's future, the settlements above, learning to survive and rebuild, the Institute below, advancing technology and science. And when the time was right, you'd return and unite them." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "That time is now, brother. Come home. Let me restore your memories. Let me show you what we've built together. Because whether you remember it or not, you're not just the founder of the Minutemen. You're the father of the Institute, too." The transmission ended. My hands were shaking. Father of the Institute, founder of the Minutemen, architect of the Commonwealth's future. Who the hell was Preston Garvey? And more importantly, who was I going to choose to be? I made my decision standing on those castle walls, watching the Commonwealth settle into an uneasy night. But it wasn't the decision anyone expected. I wasn't going to the Institute, not yet, and I wasn't going to blindly follow the protocols left by a man I didn't remember being. Instead, I was going to find out the truth, the real truth, not the one written in pre-war files or delivered through Institute transmissions. I started with Vault 111. Shaw tried to stop me. "Sir," she said, "there's nothing left there but corpses and old equipment. Whatever answers you're looking for, they're not in that frozen tomb." But I knew better. The vault had systems I hadn't explored, terminals I hadn't accessed, and most importantly, an empty cryopod. The one the security footage showed, the one that held the child version of me before he was supposedly merged with the adult. We returned at dawn, just me and Shaw. The vault door screeched open easier this time, like it was getting used to the movement. Inside, the air still tasted like death and chemicals. The frozen corpses in their pods looked even more pitiful in the morning light filtering down from the entrance. I went straight to the overseer's office. The terminal there was still active, but I'd only skimmed it before. This time, I dug deeper, accessed restricted files using codes that came to me unbidden. What I found changed everything. Vault 111 wasn't a Vault-Tec experiment. Not really. The official designation was there, the paperwork filed properly, but buried in the system logs was evidence of a secondary installation. Military-grade equipment installed months before the civilian pods, separate power systems, independent monitoring, and a note in the construction logs that made my hands shake. Installation of dual-purpose cryogenic system complete. per Colonel Garvey's specifications. Primary subject chamber and backup chamber configured for psychological integration protocol. Project Safeguard authorized by Department of Defense. Classification level, eyes only. Psychological integration protocol, not memory implants. Integration. I pulled up more files, following the thread. Found technical documents describing a process that shouldn't have been possible with pre-war technology. A way to take two separate consciousnesses and merge them over time, creating a single individual with combined traits but selective amnesia. The child wasn't a false memory. The child was real, a real person, frozen in that vault alongside the adult, and somehow, some way, they'd been combined into me. Shaw read the documents over my shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper when she spoke. They tried to create a perfect leader, someone with the tactical genius of the colonel and the empathy of a child who remembered what it was like to lose everything. But it went wrong, I said, scanning further. The integration was supposed to be complete. I wasn't supposed to remember being two different people. I was supposed to be seamlessly merged, with no gaps, no contradictions. I found the error logs. System failure during integration process. Neural patterns incompatible. Forced shutdown to prevent subject death. Integration incomplete at 73%. 73%. That's all I was. Not quite the colonel, not quite the child. Just a broken fusion of both, walking around with fragments of two different lives rattling in my skull. And there was more. Medical logs from the vault's automated systems documenting both subjects before the integration began. Subject A, adult male, age 28, military service record, exemplary, psychological profile, high-functioning sociopath with strong utilitarian ethics, capable of making necessary sacrifices for greater good, emotionally detached, recommended for command positions requiring difficult decisions. I stared at those words. High-functioning sociopath. That was the colonel. That was the man who planned to let the world burn and rebuild from the ashes. The man who arranged for his own brother to be kidnapped because it served a larger purpose. Subject B, male child, age 10, civilian, psychological profile, empathetic, idealistic, strong moral compass, demonstrates leadership potential in peer groups, recommended for integration to balance subject A's utilitarian tendencies and provide emotional stability. The child was supposed to be the humanity the colonel lacked, a conscience grafted onto a tactical mind, but the process failed, and instead of creating a balanced leader, they created me, a fractured mess who couldn't reconcile the cold calculations with the warm memories. Shaw's face had gone pale. Where did they get the child? I scrolled through more files, found an adoption record dated 2075. A 10-year-old boy, no living relatives, flagged by military psychologists as having ideal leadership traits. Placed with the Garvey family as part of Project Safeguard. They weren't my real parents, the people I remembered, the mother who made radstag stew and the father who carried me to the vault. They were handlers, military personnel assigned to raise a child who'd eventually be merged with their commanding officer. I felt sick. Every memory I had of childhood, every moment of warmth and safety, it was all part of the experiment. The child had been a lab rat, groomed and prepared for the day he'd be psychologically fused with a soldier. But there was something else in the files, something the colonel hadn't planned for. The child loved those handlers, genuinely loved them, and they'd grown to love him back. There were personal notes in the logs, things that shouldn't have been there. Observations from the mother figure about how proud she was of the boy's kindness. Concerns from the father figure about whether they were doing the right thing. And a final note, dated the 22nd of October 2077, the day before the bombs fell. I can't do this anymore. This child trusts us. He thinks we're his family. And tomorrow, we're going to put him in that pod and destroy who he is. I've tried to convince Garvey to call it off, but he won't listen. He says the integration is necessary, that the Commonwealth needs a leader who can make hard choices, but still values human life. Maybe he's right, but it doesn't make this any easier. I hope someday The person who wakes up from those pods can forgive us, can forgive all of us for what we're about to do. I closed the terminal. The truth was worse than I'd imagined. The colonel had sacrificed a child, a real innocent child, to create a better version of himself. And that child was still in here somewhere, trapped in my fractured psyche, screaming about the injustice of it all. Shaw touched my arm gently. "Sir, what do we do with this information?" "I don't know," I said, "but I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to let the colonel's plan continue, not if it means more sacrifices like this." We left the vault. I sealed the door behind us, maybe for the last time. The Commonwealth was waking up, smoke rising from settlement fires, traitors beginning their roots, a world that had no idea it was built on a foundation of calculated cruelty. Back at the castle, Ronnie was waiting with news. "Settlements are checking in," she reported. "We've got 23 confirmed in the network now, all asking for orders, all ready to move to Phase 2. "What is Phase 2? I asked. Specifically, no more vague protocols. I want to know exactly what the colonel planned. Ronnie hesitated, then led me back to the command center. She pulled up files I hadn't seen before, deeper in the system. The colonel's final strategic plan, written in clinical detail. Phase 2 was consolidation, taking control of all the settlements, establishing martial law under Minutemen authority, and systematically eliminating anyone who wouldn't fall in line. Raiders, sure, but also the Brotherhood when they arrived. The Railroad if they interfered. Even independent settlements that refused to join the network. The goal was total control. A unified Commonwealth under single military leadership. My leadership and the Institute was supposed to be the final piece. Once I'd secured the surface, I was supposed to join with Sean, combining the Institute's technology with the Minutemen's numbers, creating a new nation built on pre-war knowledge and post-war strength. It was a good plan, efficient, ruthless, exactly what you'd expect from a high-functioning sociopath with strong utilitarian ethics. But I wasn't just the colonel anymore. I was also the child who remembered what it felt like to be powerless, to be used, to have no choice in what happened to you. And that part of me was screaming that this was wrong. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. I made a choice that day, not the colonel's choice, not what the plan called for, my choice. I activated the castle's communication system and broadcast to every settlement in the network. My voice, the one that was somehow both mine and not mine, echoed across the Commonwealth. This is Preston Garvey. If you're hearing this, you're part of a network established before the war, a plan for reconstruction, and I'm here to tell you that plan is changing. I paused, gathering my thoughts. The colonel who designed this system believed in control, in sacrificing individual freedom for collective security, in making hard choices for the greater good. But I'm not just him. I'm also someone who remembers what it's like to have choices taken away, to be used as a tool for someone else's grand design. So here's what's going to happen. The Minutemen will defend settlements, will respond to calls for help, will fight raiders and mutants and anything else that threatens innocent people, but we won't demand allegiance. We won't force anyone to join us, and we sure as hell won't eliminate people just because they don't fit into some pre-war blueprint. Ronnie was staring at me. Shaw had tears in her eyes. The other Minutemen in the room looked confused but hopeful. The Commonwealth doesn't need a dictator, I continued. It doesn't need someone making cold calculations about acceptable losses. It needs people helping people. That's what the Minutemen were always supposed to be. Not an army of conquest, a militia of protection. I ended the broadcast, waited for the response, half expected the settlements to reject me, to demand the strong leadership the colonel had promised. But instead, the radio lit up with confirmations, settlements acknowledging the message, people agreeing that yes, this was better. This was what they'd actually hoped for when they heard the general was returning. Turns out the legend they'd been passing down wasn't about the colonel after all. It was about the Minutemen's ideals, about defending people at a minute's notice, not controlling them. Ronnie laughed, surprising me. You know what, General? Maybe that integration failure was the best thing that could have happened, because the Commonwealth doesn't need the Colonel, it needs you, whoever you are. But my decision had consequences. The Institute didn't take it well. X6-88 appeared at the castle 3 days later, not bothering with stealth this time. He walked right up to the gate with a platoon of synths and demanded to speak with me. "Father is disappointed," he said when I met him in the courtyard. "You're deviating from the plan. The integration was supposed to restore your tactical thinking, not amplify your emotional weaknesses. Tell Father I'm not interested in his vision," I said. "I'm not joining the Institute, and I'm not unifying the Commonwealth under military rule." The synth's expression didn't change. "Then you leave us no choice. The Institute will proceed without you. We'll find another way to achieve surface integration. Your cooperation was preferred, but it was never strictly necessary." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Your brother wanted me to tell you that he's still family, even if you don't remember him, even if you reject what he's built. When you're ready to come home, the door will be open." They left peacefully, but I knew it wasn't over. The Institute would make their move eventually. And when they did, I'd have to face my brother, the man I'd allegedly arranged to have kidnapped before I was even fully myself. The Brotherhood of Steel arrived in the Commonwealth a week later, their airship appearing like a metal god in the sky. I met with Elder Maxon personally, expecting confrontation. The Colonel's plans had marked them as enemies, after all, but Maxon surprised me. "We've heard about what you're doing, Garvey," he said. "Rebuilding settlements without forced conscription, defending people without demanding loyalty. It's respectable, almost naive, but respectable." We reached an understanding. The Brotherhood would pursue their mission to secure technology. The Minutemen would defend settlements. We'd cooperate where our goals aligned and stay out of each other's way when they didn't. It wasn't the total warfare the Colonel had planned. It was something messier, more complicated, more human. The railroad contacted me next, through a dead drop in Diamond City. They'd been watching, they said. They'd seen me reject the Institute's offer. They wanted to know if the Minutemen would help runaway synths. I thought about it for a long time. The Colonel would have said no. Synths were tools, resources, not people deserving of protection. But the child in me, the one who knew what it was like to be used, couldn't accept that. "We'll help," I told their agent. "Any synth that wants freedom will find it with the Minutemen. But we won't actively fight the Institute unless they force our hand." It was a middle ground, imperfect, risky, but it felt right. Mama Murphy found me a month later. She walked right into the castle like she owned the place, leaning on a cane, but moving with surprising strength for someone her age. "You're different from what I saw," she said without preamble. "In my visions, the general who returned was cold, efficient. He united the Commonwealth, sure, but at a terrible cost. You're not him." "No," I said. "I'm not." She smiled, showing teeth stained by years of chems. "Good. The Commonwealth doesn't need another tyrant. It needs someone who makes mistakes, someone who chooses compassion over efficiency, someone human." She pulled out a small holotape. "Found this in Quincy after the gunners left. Thought you should have it." I loaded the tape later, alone in my quarters. It was a recording of Colonel Hollis, made days before the Quincy massacre. He was talking to his officers, planning their response to the gunner threat, and then he said something that hit me like a bullet. "The general's plan calls for acceptable losses, for strategic sacrifices, but I didn't become a Minuteman to make those calculations. I became a Minuteman to help people, and if that means going against the Colonel's protocols, so be it. We defend Quincy, all of it, no acceptable losses." Hollis had rejected the plan too. He'd chosen to be human instead of efficient, and it got him killed. But it also made him a hero. The settlements still talked about Hollis, about the Minuteman who stood when everyone else ran. His death meant something because he chose to value people over strategy. I keep that holotape on my desk now, a reminder that the Colonel's way isn't the only way. That sometimes, the tactically sound decision is also the morally wrong one. The Commonwealth protocol remains locked on my Pip-Boy. I haven't tried to access it since that day in the command center. Whatever final protocols the Colonel left, whatever endgame he envisioned, I don't need them. Because here's what I've learned in the months since I woke up in that frozen vault. It doesn't matter if I'm the Colonel or the child or some broken combination of both. What matters is the choice I make right now, today, in this moment. The settlements keep growing, people keep calling for help, and the Minutemen keep responding, not because some pre-war plan demands it, but because it's the right thing to do. Sean still sends me messages, invitations to visit, promises to restore my memories, offers of alliance. I don't respond. Maybe someday I'll go to the Institute. Maybe someday I'll face my brother and try to explain why I rejected his vision. But not today. Today, I'm standing on the castle walls, watching the sun set over the Commonwealth. The artillery below is armed and ready, but I hope we never have to use it. The settlements are checking in, reporting on harvests and trade and the small victories that matter more than any grand strategy. And I'm thinking about that child. The real 10-year-old boy who was sacrificed so the Colonel could have a conscience. I don't know if he's still in here somewhere, if his consciousness survived the integration, or if he was just dissolved into the fragments that make up who I am now. But I make a promise to him anyway. To that scared kid who wanted his parents back, who didn't ask to be part of any experiment, I promise that his sacrifice won't be for nothing. That the person I've become, fractured and confused as I am, will try to make choices he'd be proud of, will protect people instead of calculating their value, will choose compassion over efficiency, even when it's harder. The Commonwealth doesn't need a savior. It doesn't need a mastermind with a perfect plan. It needs people who care, people who try, people who make mistakes but keep going anyway. So that's what I'll be. Not the Colonel, not the child, just Preston Garvey, trying to do right by people who deserve better than they've gotten. And if that means the grand reconstruction plan fails, if that means the Commonwealth rebuilds slower, messier, more chaotically than the Colonel envisioned, then so be it. Because some things are worth more than efficiency. Some things are worth more than perfect plans. Freedom is one of them. Choice is another. And the belief that people deserve to decide their own futures, even if they choose wrong sometimes. That's my confession. That's my warning. I'm Preston Garvey, and I'm either 210 years old or 10 years old, depending on which truth you believe. But whoever I am, whatever I am, I'm trying to be better than the person who designed me. The Commonwealth is watching, the Institute is waiting, and somewhere in the wasteland, there are people who need help. So I'll do what the Minutemen have always done. I'll respond at a minute's notice, not because a plan demands it, but because it's right. That's all any of us can do. Try to be human in a world that's forgotten what humanity means. Try to choose right when every option is wrong. Try to protect the people who can't protect themselves, and hope that's enough.